Sivaya Nama Tiruchitrambalam. Welcome back to our discussion on the ninth Thirumurai. This is taken as a 360-degree view on the ninth Thirumurai. And in this series, this is taken as a 1-year series. And in this particular series, we are also introducing English versions. In this, we have already seen couple of speeches in English, and one very beautiful topic that we are going to talk about today is on Lord Muruga. Basically, we are going to talk about adoration of Lord Muruga in Thiruvisaipaa. There is only one Thirupadigam, basically the entire ninth Thirumurai. There are 29 Thirupadigams, and in that one is dedicated to Lord Muruga, and our ardent speaker, Siva, Srinivasan Govindaraj Ayya from Chennai has joined us to give this particular discourse. To talk about him, he is a management consultant and also a visiting faculty in a couple of universities and colleges. And not only that, he travels around the globe to talk about agile implementations as well as project management related. And his passion for Saivism as well as the literature, Tamil literatures, is something which is really mind-blowing, because all the way from management, we are able to see there's a vast difference in literature as well. So one is the science part of the brain, another one is the art part of the brain, and brother Srinivasan has got a very beautiful balancing between the left and the right brain, I would say. That is why he's able to talk about all these literatures and in his own speciality. So without further ado, let me hand over the stage to Brother Srinivasan. He's going to talk about Lord Muruga. Anna, Sivaya Nama.
Sivaya Nama. I'm very glad to meet all of you today in this forum to talk about a very interesting and a topic very dear to my heart. It's about the adoration of Lord Muruga in ninth Thirumurai. So in this series, there has been a lot of lectures and discussions on ninth Thirumurai. So this particular day, we are going to look at Muruga's presence in ninth Thirumurai, what kind of attention he is getting in this Thirumurai. So first, I think in the entire set of 12 Thirumurais, every Thirumurai there is a reference to Lord Muruga. Starting with the first Thirumurai of Thirungana Sambandar, there is a reference to him and he says, Muruganadu Perumai Pahar Mudukundru Adaivome. And more than that, the Saivite tradition, we believe that Thirungana Sambandar himself is an incarnation of Lord Muruga, as people like Saint Arunagirinadar has very categorically asserted that Muruga himself took birth as Thirungana Sambandar. And therefore, the first Thirumurai itself, we can assume that it has Muruga's stamp and his signature. And throughout every Thirumurai, there is some reference to Murugan. And in the 12th Thirumurai of Periyapranam, in the Sirutondar, story of Sirutondar, which you all know, after testing Sirutondar, and finally Siva appears before him. So Sekidar specifically mentions that Siva appeared before him along with Parvati Devi and also with Lord Muruga in his Somaskanda form. So he says, Malai Payanda Tayyalodum Saravanathu Tanayalodum Tam Anaivar. So throughout the Thirumurais, we see that references to Muruga is definitely there. And specifically in the 12th and the 9th Thirumurai, we have actually a text dedicated to Lord Muruga himself. In the 11th Thirumurai, we have Nakira's Thirumurugatrupadai, which is a devotional text very close to the hearts of all Murugan devotees. And we all know that Thirumurugatrupadai was already there in the anthology of Pattu Pattu. So in the Saivite tradition, they wanted to, because of the importance given to that text, they included it in the 11th Thirumurai. This is one of those unique texts which finds itself in two different anthologies. And in the 9th Thirumurai, again, we have a Padiham, which is Sendanar's Padiham on Thiruvisaipaa, dedicated to Lord Muruga. And Thiruvisaipaa is a Shiva Sthalam, but also is a Murugan Sthalam. It's a Thirupugal Sthalam where Arunagirinadar has come and composed several beautiful Thirupugal songs. And Sendanar has sung 10 songs, one Padiham there on Thiruvisaipaa Murugan. which is very unique in the ninth Thirumurai because all the other Padihams are devoted to Lord Shiva, with some references to Murugan here and there. But this is a Padiham dedicated to Lord Muruga himself. And interestingly, Sendanar, the name of Sendan itself is the name of Lord Muruga. So we have this connection of Lord Muruga is there in the ninth Thirumurai. Today we will see a little bit more, dive deep and see how these references come and what kind of picture we get of Lord Muruga in the ninth Thirumurai. But before that, just want to make this fact clear that as far as the Shaivites are concerned, there's no difference between Lord Shiva and Muruga. We consider Murugan to be the manifestation of Lord Shiva, Lord Shiva in another disguise. So, and that fact is corroborated by Puranas like Kanda Puranam. For the Shaivites, three Puranas are considered as the three eyes of Lord Shiva, equivalent to the three eyes of Lord Shiva. One is Periya Puranam, the other is Thiruvisaipaa Puranam, and the third is Kanda Puranam. So the fact that Kanda Puranam, which is about the story of Muruga, is itself is considered as like another eye of Shiva, one of the three eyes of Shiva, is the proof that we see Muruga and Shiva as one and the same. I just want to quote a few Kanda Puranam verses to reinforce this fact before we move on to Lord Muruga in the ninth Thirumurai. When all the celestial beings go to Lord Shiva and pray to him that he should deliver them from the troubles they are experiencing in the hands of Surapadman. So they know that only Shiva's Shakti can destroy Surapadman. And therefore they are praying to Lord Shiva to appear as, in another form to come in Surapadman. So there the song goes like this. Adiyum naduvum ஈரும் அருவமும் உருவும் ஒப்பும் ஏதுவும் வரவும் போக்கும் இன்பமும் துன்பும் இன்றி வேதமும் கடந்து நின்ற விமல ஓர் குமரன் தன்னை நீ தரல் வேண்டும் நின்பால் நின்னையே நிகர்க்க என்றார். So you will have to give a son who is exactly like you, and you have to give him நீ தரல் வேண்டும் நின்பால் நின்னையே நிகர்க்க என்றார். First they describe Shiva in all this, his absolute qualities, that he is not limited by time and space, he is beyond all time and space, beyond all conditioning, beyond all forms, and oppum, that means he has no comparison. So if you are asking someone who has no comparison at all to give a son, that means he has to come, because there is no other person can match him. So this is one verse. And then when the celestial beings ask Lord Shiva like this, and he says, Shiva says, that I'll definitely give a son like that. After saying that, Andikku Nigar Mei Annal Arul Purindu Aringarayor Sintikkum Tanadu Tollai Thirumuham Arum Kondan. Having said that, Shiva then assumed all his six faces. So that means the sixth face was hidden, and Shiva is now manifested himself with six faces. This is another verse which clearly shows the equivalence of Shiva and Murugan. And then Murugan appears. And even when Kanda Puranam talks about the appearance of Murugan, it says, Aruvamum Uruvumagi Anadiyai Palavai Undrai Viramamai Nindra Shodhi Pidambador Meniyaga Karunaikur Muhangalarum Karangal Panirandum Konde Uruthiru Murugan Vandangu Udithanan Volahamuye. Again it says that that eternal light which is shining as Brahman, which is Shiva, and he took six faces and assumed 12 hands and appeared as Murugan. So that's how Kanda Puranam describes. And if you look at it from the philosophical point of view, Shiva is called as En Gunathan, one who has the 8 noble qualities. And those qualities, the 8 qualities can be actually compressed to 6 qualities, and the 6 qualities can be further compressed to 3, which is Sat Chit Ananda. And so referring to this, Kanda Puranam says, Yevarthan Palumindri Yellaidhir Amalarku Ulla Moviru Gunanum Seikku Muhangalai Vandadenna Puviyal Sharavanathan Poigayil Vaihum Ayyan Avigal Arulumatral Arumuham Kondan Andre. He again explains that the 6 qualities of Shiva became the 6 faces of this child. And when after Murugan is born and he is there in Sharavana Poigai, Shiva takes Parvati and shows the child. And at that time again Shiva says, Adalin Namadu Shakti Arumuhan Avanum Yamum Pedaham Mandral Nampol Perivilan Yandum Nindran. This is how Shiva himself introduces Murugan, saying that this Shanmuka, the six-faced child, is none other than myself. Vedaham Mandral Nampol Perigal. So this is the belief of Shaivites that Murugan is another manifestation of Shiva. He is Arumuhat Shivan. That's how we refer to him. And therefore, it's very apt that in the 9th Thirumurai that we have these excellent references to Murugan. And if you look at the very first verse of Thiruvisaipaa, the 9th Thirumurai, it says, Olivalar Vilakke, Ulappila Vandre. So, introducing God as light, Unarvu Shul Kadandador Unarve, Alivarum Bullattu Anandakaniye. So, when you are describing Lord as light, as bliss, I mean, that is a description of Lord Muruga himself. And in the final verse of Thiruvisaipaa and Tirupallandu, the 9th Thirumurai, the final Padiham is Tirupallandu. In that, the last verse, which is the 13th verse, it ends like this. Andamil Ananda Chendan, Yanai Puhundu Andu Kondu Aruyirmel, Pandam Periya Parindavane Endru Pallandu Kurudime. So even the very last verse, the name of Murugan Sendan appears. Of course, here Sendana refers to himself. But as we have seen, Sendan is the name of Lord Muruga. Sendane Kandane Shengotu Verpane is a very popular Kandalarankaram song. The Sendan is the name of Muruga, very dear to all Murugan devotees. So here, it's very interesting to note that Thiruvisaipaa starts with the symbolic description of Lord Muruga in the form of light and bliss, and ends with the clear reference to his name as Ananda Chendan, the Sendan who gives a lot of bliss. So we can take it as a reference to Lord Muruga, though here Sendanar is actually referring to himself. So as we have seen in the 9th Thirumurai, so we have Sendanar's Padihams. We have 4 Padihams. One of the Padihams is on Thiruvidaikadi. It is a very beautiful Murugan Sthalam as well as Shiva Sthalam. And there all the 10 songs are devoted to Lord Muruga. So these songs are in the form of the Nayaka Nayaki Bhavam, where a lover talks about the Lord who has captivated her heart. And in this Padiham, the mother talks about the state of her child, of her daughter who is constantly pining for Lord Muruga and adoring him and constantly mentioning his names, thinking about him, singing about him, and how she is melting, thinking about Lord Muruga. So that is a format which we call as Agatturai, in which these 10 songs are there in this Padiham. We don't have time today to look at all the Padihams. In fact, there has been other lecture sessions where the Sendanar Padiham on Murugan has been analyzed and presented. I'm going to today just highlight a few names of Lord Muruga which appears, beautiful names of Murugan which appears in this Padiham. But before that, I'll just read out the first stanza of this Padiham. Malula Manam Tandu En Kayil Sangam Vavinan Malaimahal Madalai Velulam Tevar Kulamuludalum Kumaravel Vallidan Manalan Selulam Kadani Thiruvidaikadiyil Tirukura Nidarkil Nindra Velulam Kadakkai Vendan En Sendan Ennum En Melliyal Nivide. Beautiful words. And this is how this entire Padiham goes in the same mood of how this mother looks at her daughter and says how she is pining for the Lord and how she is expressing her love. So if you look at the names of Lord Muruga, which finds mention in this Padiham, they're very interesting. It says, Devar Kulamuludalum Vendan. That means one who is celebrated and worshipped by all the celestial beings and one who rules their kingdom. And Vallidan Manalan, of course, the consort of Valli. Velulam Tadakkai Vendan, one who holds the famous veil of the spear. Ilam Kalai, one who is the young one. Kanaka Kundrana Kalvan is another beautiful reference. We all know how Lord Shiva is referred to as Ullam Kavar Kalvan in the first Thirumurai itself by Trigana Sambandar. Here, Sendanar calls Murugan as Kanaka Kundrana Kalvan, one who is like the golden mountain, Pon Malai. And that is in fact another description of Shiva, Ponnar Meni we say. So here we call Murugan as Kanaka Kundana Kalvan. Then Kulagan, Aragan. Kulagan means one who is ever youthful, one who is ever youthful and beautiful. In fact, that is the definition of Murugan, one who has youth and beauty in him. So here this Padiham calls Murugan as Kulagan and Aragan. And also Murugan is described through all the relations that he has. We see Murugan as the son of Lord Shiva, son of Parvati, the brother of Ganapati, and also the son-in-law of Mahavishnu. So all these relations are referred here in this Padikam. Vallal than Pillai, Ganapati pin Ilam Kilai, Malaymagal Madalai, Mal Thirumurai. All these, we try to understand Lord through the relations, and this is how it's presented. And most interestingly, the word Subramanian appears here in this ninth Thirumurai. And the entire Tamil devotional literature, this is the first time that the word Subramanya appears. Because we don't find that term in Thirumurai, we don't find that term in the text before that. But this ninth Thirumurai, which has appeared in the 9th century, the first time the word Subramanian appears. And of course, in Tirupugal later, Aranagirinathar uses the term Subramanian. I'll read out that verse, which mentioned a very unique verse and historically very important because of the word that Subramanian that appears here. Kovinai, Pavala Kuramana Kola Kurangal, Sul Kodival Kodion, Kaval Narchene, Enna Kapavan, En Punnai, Mehalai Kavarvane, Devin Natalevan, Tirvedekadiil, Tirukuranidakil Nindra, Tuvinar Pili Mamayil Urum, Subramanian Tane. So that's how Sendanar introduces the term Subramanian to Tamil devotional literature. And he also says in the 11th verse, Swami Aye, that's how he refers to Murugan. This is another fact which is very dear to Murugan devotees, that the Sanskrit word Swami, though it is generally used for all forms of God, the Sanskrit dictionary says that the word Swami refers very specifically only to Lord Muruga. In fact, jokingly, the Murugan devotees say the word Swami is borrowed by all the other gods and other forms of gods. The word legitimately belongs only to Lord Muruga. That's why we call one of the Aru Padai Veedu, 6 Padai Veedus as Swami Malai. So that term is also used in this Padikam of Sendanar when he says Swami Aye. He also says in the same verse, he refers to Lord Muruga as Togai Mihu Namattavan, one who has a number of names. This reminds us of the Thiruvasakam verse. Urunamam Oruruvam Mundumilarku Ayiram Tirunamam Padinam Tellenam Pattamam. So we believe that the Lord doesn't have any name. But when it comes to having names, I mean, nobody can have more names than him. Because there's thousands of names, not one Sahasranama, but several Sahasranamas for him. And Murugan is Tohai Mihu Namattavan, one who has several names and epithets for him. And Sendanar also calls Murugan as Panniru Nayanattu Arumuhattu Amudu. In a very beautiful way, he says, this is nectar of bliss, which has 6 faces and 12 shoulders. And this is a very beautiful symbolism here. And this reminds us of one of the very popular Kandaralankaram verses of Aranagirinathar, where he says, Patti Tirumuham Arudan Panniru Tolgalamai Tittittu Irukkum Amudu Kandeen. I saw a nectar, blissful nectar, divine nectar, which has 6 faces and 12 shoulders. So a term which is reminding us of that Kandaralankaram verse. Sendanar says, Panniru Nayanattu Arumuhattu Amudu. So since we have this entire Padikam of Sendanar has been analyzed and presented in this lecture series, I'm not getting into all the Padikams, but we can see how in very endearing terms, very affectionate terms, Murugan is called. As it said that Sendanar, the Shiva devotee, finally spent his last stage of his life actually in Thiruvisaipaa, doing his service to the Murugan temple there. So in another Padikam of Sendanar, Ekanayakane, here also he refers to Murugan as Sendan and he says Sendan Tadayai. So that's another reference to Lord Muruga. And Thirumaligai Tevar, in the very first Padikam, starting Olivalar Vilakke, the 7th verse, there is a reference to Lord Muruga where he says, Anagane Kumara Vinayaka Sanaka Ambalattu Amarasekarane. Here again the reference comes to Muruga as Kumaran. And another Padikam is Karvur Tevar, Tiruchattiya Kudi. Periyava Karunai Elanila Erikum என்று ஆரம்பிக்கும். The Padikam starts like that. In that, the 5th verse, he says, Thirumagan Murugan Deviyel Umayal. And he introduces Shiva through all the relations. The first relation he talks about is that he is the father of Lord Murugan. So we have these very interesting references to Lord Murugan. As I said, we don't see any difference between Murugan and Shivan. So wherever Shiva is praised and adored, Murugan is also adored and praised there. That's why we gave the reference from Kandapuranam there. But it pleases the heart of Murugan devotees when to see Shiva's appearance as Lord Murugan, and therefore when we see these references in all the Thirumurais, our heart becomes exceedingly glad. We have Thirunavukarasar saying, "Nam kadambanai petraval panginan, Yankadan Panisaidu Kadapade," that very famous verse where he refers to the Lord as Nam Kadambanai Petraval Panginan, where he endearingly says, "Our Lord Muruga, the father of our Lord Muruga." And so that is the connection that Shiva devotees with Lord Muruga. And we see that same adoration, same love for Lord Muruga exhibited in the 9th Thirumurai, not only in that Padigam of Sendanar, Thiruvidaikali Padigam of Sendanar, but in the entire 9th Thirumurai, through very select references to Lord Muruga. And as I said, symbolically and philosophically, even the very first verse of Thiruvisaipaa and the very last verse of Tirupallandu have a reference to Lord Muruga. So with these words, I close my lecture today, and thank you all for listening to this, and may the blessings of Lord Muruga be with you all. Thank you. Namachivaya.